Today we're diving into James Clear's Atomic Habits. You know, this book is a total game changer, and it's all built on this one simple, powerful idea. The secret to getting incredible results isn't about some massive overnight transformation. Nope, it's about thousands of tiny, consistent changes. So let's unpack how this actually works.
Sound familiar? I mean, we've all been there, right? You make a New Year's resolution, or you get this sudden burst of motivation. I'm going to go to the gym every day. I'm going to learn Spanish. And it starts off great, but then, poof, it just fizzles out. It's this super frustrating cycle that we all seem to get stuck in.
Well, here's the first big and honestly kind of relieving idea from the book. The problem isn't you. Seriously, you're not lazy, you don't lack willpower. According to James Clear, the real issue is your system. You're basically fighting the wrong battle, trying to muscle your way through change instead of designing a system that makes it easy. So that brings us to the first big roadblock we all face, what he calls the myth of massive action. You know, we're kind of conditioned to think that to get big results, we need to take some huge, heroic, life-changing leap.
And yeah, this is where we tend to get it all backwards. We chase that massive action and radical change because, let's be honest, the idea of a big, dramatic moment of success is really appealing. But what actually works, it's the complete opposite. It's the small stuff, tiny habits, these little 1% improvements, and just having a daily system you can count on.
Okay, so if massive action is a myth, then what's the reality? Well, it all boils down to the central theme of the whole book, the absolutely mind-blowing power of tiny, compounding gains.
And this is what Clear calls atomic habits. And the name is just perfect, right? They're tiny, like an atom, but they're also the fundamental building blocks of a much bigger system. Think about it. Every single remarkable result you could ever want is really just a big collection of these tiny atomic habits stacked together.
Okay, and this is where the math just gets wild. If you improve by just 1% every single day for a year, you don't just end up 365% better. No way. Thanks to the magic of compounding, you end up almost 38 times better. It's incredible. That tiny, almost unnoticeable effort literally snowballs into something massive.
But, and this is a huge but, this whole thing is a double-edged sword. The math works in reverse too. Getting just 1% worse each day, skipping that workout, making one poor food choice. It doesn't feel like a big deal in the moment, but over a year, that negative compounding basically erodes you down to almost nothing. It really shows how these tiny habits set the entire trajectory of your life.
So this brings us to a really critical mindset shift. You need to stop focusing on goals and start focusing on systems. Look, a goal is the finish line. It's the result you want. But the system is the process that actually gets you there. Think about it. Winners and losers in any field, they often have the exact same goals. It's the person with the better system who wins.
All right, this all sounds great, but how do you actually build these systems? Well, thankfully, Claire gives us a super simple, really powerful, and practical framework he calls the 4 laws of behavior change.
You can literally think of this as your personal toolkit for change. To build any good habit, you just follow these 4 steps. 1, make it obvious. 2, make it attractive. 3, make it easy. And 4, make it satisfying. Let's dig into each one.
First up, make it obvious. See, this law is all about the cues that trigger our habits. So many of our actions are just automatic responses to our environment. Your phone buzzes, you pick it up without even thinking. That buzz is the cue. So to build a good habit, you've got to stop relying on willpower and start making the cue for the right action totally obvious, impossible to miss.
So how do you actually do that? Well, one way is to be super specific with what's called an implementation intention. You just state exactly when and where you'll do something. But my favorite technique is habit stacking. You just link your new habit to a habit you already do every day. So instead of a vague, I'll meditate, you say, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. See? The coffee you are already making becomes the obvious cue.
Okay, law number 2, make it attractive. This one's pretty intuitive, right? The more appealing something is, the more likely you are to do it. Our brains are basically wired to chase things that feel good. So the trick here is to hijack that process and make our good habits something we actually want to do. And a really cool way to do this is with a strategy called temptation bundling. This is where you pair something you want to do with something you need to do. For example, maybe you only let yourself listen to your favorite podcast while you're working out. Or you only get to watch that new Netflix show while you're on the treadmill.
You're bundling the temptation with the habit, making the habit way more attractive.
Law number 3 is so simple but so powerful. Make it easy. Look, we are all biologically programmed to take the path of least resistance. It's just human nature. So the more effort or friction a habit takes, the less likely we are to stick with it. The secret is to make your good habits as frictionless as possible.
And the best tool for this, by far, is the 2-minute rule. Here's how it works. You scale down any new habit so that it takes less than 2 minutes to do. So read more becomes read 1 page. Run a 5K becomes put on my running shoes. The point isn't to get results right away. The point is to master the art of just showing up. Because once you start, it's so much easier to keep going. And that brings us to the 4th and final law, which closes the whole loop. Make it satisfying. See, after you do anything, your brain immediately asks a question. Was that worthwhile? Should we do that again? For a habit to actually stick, the answer needs to be a big, immediate yes.
So how do you do that? Using a habit tracker is a perfect example. I mean, who doesn't love the satisfying feeling of checking a box? It's a little hit of pleasure for your brain, and it's visual proof that you're making progress. And here's the cardinal rule Clear talks about. Never miss twice. Look, missing 1 day is an accident. Life happens. Missing 2 days in a row? That's the start of a new bad habit.
Okay, so those 4 laws give you the how-to, but there's a much deeper level to making change that actually lasts. It's not just about the things you do, it's about the person you become. And honestly, this might be the most powerful idea in the entire book. Most of us focus on outcome-based goals, right? Like, I want to write a novel. But a much, much more powerful way to think is to focus on your identity. I want to become a writer. That tiny shift in how you frame it, it changes everything.
Here's the big takeaway. Every single action you take is like casting a vote for the type of person you want to be. When you meditate for just 1 minute, you're casting a vote that says, I'm a calm person. When you read 1 page, you're casting a vote for, I am a reader. And these little votes, they add up and up until your identity actually starts to change. That's how real, lasting change happens. All right, so let's put all of this together into a practical toolkit. Because now you have everything you need, not just to build good habits, but to finally break those pesky bad ones too. And what's so brilliant about this whole framework is how elegant it is. To break a bad habit, you don't need some complicated new strategy. You just flip the 4 laws upside down. You make the bad habit invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. Want to stop scrolling on your phone so much? Make it invisible by putting it in another room. Make it difficult by logging out of all your apps. It's that simple. So, to wrap it all up, what are the biggest things to remember? First, those tiny atomic habits, they're basically the compound interest of self-improvement. They snowball into huge results. Second, focus on building good systems, not just chasing goals. Third, shape your environment to make good habits the easy option. And finally, the most important one, remember that every single thing you do is a vote for the person you're becoming. And that leaves us with just one final question for you. This isn't about some massive life overhaul tomorrow. It's just about casting one tiny vote today. So what is the one single 2-minute habit you could start right now, today, to begin becoming the person you ultimately want to be?